everybody, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to my weekly deck review video. So this is the video where I go over the decks that I have been working with this week, my thoughts on working with them, my experiences, and then I will also share with you at the end of this video the decks that I will be working with next week. So this week I've got a lot to say. So hopefully this will be short, but you know me, so, or maybe you know me. If you're new here, then, you know, grab a cuppa or something and settle in, because I make no guarantees for the length of this video. That being said, I have to share with you a fun little purchase I picked up. Look at how cute this is. You'll probably see this in my thumbnail, but probably not looking this good because the photo doesn't like to focus on light. There's also a light box behind me that says peace and love. Camera doesn't pick up on that either. And in my head, it was like, this is going to look so cute in the background of my videos. This, yes, that, not so much. Although I'm kind of vibing on this like multicolor thing. It does, except when it goes all, I guess it doesn't go all blue. It's kind of blue-green. Anyways, this is fun. It's got dry erase, so you get to see my messy handwriting. Woo! Anyways, so the decks that I've been working with this week, as you just saw, was the Druidcraft Tarot by Stephanie Cargrom, I believe. Yes, and it's illustrated by Will Worthington. He was whose name I was totally blanking on last week when I was talking about the decks I was going to be working with, and I know his name because I know the decks he's illustrated, and I just blanked it. But yes, it is Will Worthington. That should have been in the description box of last video, but I did trim this deck this week, and I like trimming and edging decks. It's a fantastic bonding exercise, but these are the backs after being trimmed. I used a large corner rounder, and I trimmed it in a like chestnut brown that matched the backs. It does, on some of the longer titles, cut in a little bit, but that didn't bother me at all, which is something I thought might bother me, but it did not. This deck is gorgeous, and I really enjoyed working with it this week. It feels very grounded, very earthy. It read really well for me. I have no complaints about that. It's very much, in a lot of ways, a Rider-Waite-Smith clone, with some subtle changes here in the Three of Cups. We have a masculine energy, which we don't normally. We have some action happening in the Eight of Wands. But a lot of the cards are just this very Celtic, earthy take on the Rider-Waite-Smith. And I just love its vibe. It was this would be a fantastic deck to work with in any season. But I just found it very clear. The images, I didn't have to think about them when they came up. I did have the opportunity to use this deck in 2 client readings this week, and it performed very well for me. I also did a reading for Peggy and a reading for myself with this deck. I don't think there's any card in here that I dislike, which is really nice. It was good. It was good. And it was expansive enough, I felt like, to still work with some numerology within the reading. And speaking of numerology, so I've got to get into the guidebook because there's some good stuff about this particular guidebook. So let me stop showing you images for a second. It's really tempting to keep going because they're just so beautiful and vibrant. By the way, I did pick up this deck. This was a secondhand purchase for me, so I found it from somebody locally. It was in brand new, like new condition. I don't think the cards had ever been used. I mean, it's pristine. Like, the cardstock is not the least bit worn. But I found out when I was reading the guidebook that this is actually a first edition from 2004, which was kind of cool. I don't know. The geek in me loved it. This guidebook, you can get this deck in 2 ways. So if you order it online, you can find a version that comes with this big full-size book, or you can find a version that comes in a smaller deck-sized box with like a little white book. Go for the big version. I don't think the price difference is all that dramatic. Maybe $10 Canadian, which means probably even less US, and if you wait for a sale on Amazon, this deck is pretty easy to get your hands on still, but I don't know if that's always going to be the case. But this book, you guys, was so good. I read it cover to cover, and I just want to share a couple things from this that really, really stood out to me. So firstly, I just marked with little pieces of sticky note here. Firstly, in this section of the book in the intro, we find out what Druidcraft stands for, and it's really meant to be kind of a hybrid between Druid and as a path and Wicca or Witchcraft as a path. And the hybrid of these they've named Druidcraft. So you see Wiccan elements or witchy elements, like that sort of old school Wicca kind of element in here for sure, but it's melded in this really beautiful way with the Druid lore and Druid history. This deck and this book are so well researched and so beautifully done. There's a lot of layers of symbology in the cards that made reading the guidebook totally worthwhile, but I totally distracted myself. Sorry, back to this part. So this part of the book actually features a grid, which shows you that if you lay out the majors starting from the Fool at the top in a clockwise circle, and then above that you lay out the court cards, and then above that you lay out the minors starting from the Pentacles, the Ace of Pentacles right at winter solstice, so it lines it up with the Wheel of the Year. So Ace of Pentacles right at winter solstice, through to the Ace of Swords at the spring equinox, down through the Ace of Wands at summer solstice, and then the Ace of Cups at Samhain, or excuse me, at the autumn equinox. Then what you get is this really cool association of the suits with the different seasons and with the different Sabbats. There's some really cool things, but one of the things that this book does is it talks about how the court cards kind of representing aspects of the self. There's 16 court cards, which this book also references might line up with the 16 Myers-Briggs personality types, which is a really cool little side note I got out of this, and I really want to dive deeper into that because that stuff fascinates me. But it talks about how if you are in the middle and you look outward, these are the outer mysteries, the minor arcana. So the first stage of sort of learning, both Druid and Wiccan paths typically have 3 degrees of training or of initiation. And so it speaks to doing the outer mysteries first, and then turning inward to these inner mysteries after that. And so the way that the book goes through the descriptions of the cards is it actually starts with the courts. So it starts, and in this deck it's princesses, princes, queens, and kings. And then after that you go into the pips. And then finally you finish with the majors. And that was kind of refreshing because a lot of books start with the majors and then go into the pips. It's just a very familiar layout. And I kind of liked that they shook it up a bit by kind of working on self or aspects of self first, then minors, then majors. But also what this book does beautifully is it has a really nice thick layer of numerology on top of your sort of typical meanings. So it is organized in the minors. You go aces as a group, then 2s as a group, 3s as a group, and so on all the way through 10s. And so there's a page on what the aces sort of mean as a grouping of number. And this book, believe it or not, actually totally talks about the math, the similar math to what I've been exposed to in Tom Benjamin's Tarot on Earth. This talks about how if you have an idea of what aces stand for and you combine that with what you know of the suit, then you basically get your meaning. And then from there you can layer on top of that things from Rider-Waite-Smith or Golden Dawn or whatnot. So brilliantly put together, and it really demonstrates that. This book also does a beautiful job of talking about the symbology in every card, so you really know that everything that's placed in each image is done very intentionally. One really cool section in here, like this book really did blow me away, and I did read it, the full thing. One thing that's really interesting is that it talks a little bit about the story from the Mabinogion, which is Welsh mythology. Welsh mythology, and there's a story about how Caradwen was making a special brew for her child, and I might get this wrong, but it's accurate in here, and I've studied that story before. I'm bad with remembering details, but in essence, Caradwen was making this magical brew. In fact, it might be in here. It's all over the place. It shows up in a few places, but in any case, Taliesin, or who is to become Taliesin, is stirring the brew for her, and some splatters onto his thumb, and he's 3 drops, and he sucks his finger or thumb to just instinctively just to get it off. And what results after that is she gets very angry because he got the brew that was meant for somebody else, and so this chase ensues. So there's a few parts to the chase. First, he turns into a rabbit, and is chased by, or a hare, and is chased by a greyhound. Then there's turns into there's like a wren chased by a bird, then a salmon, and he's chased by a otter, and finally he turns into a grain of wheat, and Caradwen turns into a hen and eats the grain, and then Taliesin is reborn as Taliesin. Anyways, it's kind of a cool old story, but what they've done with the 5s in this actually is that in each of the 5s you see one stage of that chase, which is really cool, and they talk about the reason that they did that, so that in the 5 of Wands here you see a hen eating a piece of grain, so it's that part of the story. In the Cups, you see in the very background there, I know these are dark images, I should have grabbed the full color, but you see the otter chasing the salmon. Then you have the hawk chasing the wren, or whatever the two bird chases are, in the background of the Five of Swords. And in the background of the Five of Pentacles is the hare being chased by the greyhound back here in the background. I just thought that was really cool that they wove that into the story. And there's a lot more here. So in every book, or sorry, in every card, they've done a beautiful job of not only tying in sort of Druid lore and also some Welsh mythology in here as well, but also of just layering the numerological meaning beautifully with Rider-Waite-Smith. So if you have been learning Marseille or Pip or numerology, or you've been studying that, this is an excellent deck to sort of hybridize what you know of Rider-Waite-Smith with what you know of numerology. So good. And I'm actually very lucky because right as I had picked up and started to work with Tarot on Earth and was picking my sources for numerology, shortly after I did that stage of that study, that was when I picked up this deck and this book. And I just happened to be flipping through the book really quickly, noticed that it was grouped by number, read each of these cover pages that talks about each number, and actually did incorporate back then some of the stuff from this into my personal numerological meaning that I then developed. If that doesn't make any sense, check out the first couple videos in the Tarot de Marseille on Earth study series that I did on here, but this would be such a great deck for bridging Rider-Waite-Smith with numerology. That's what I'm going to say about that. So this was very exciting. It's a book I will refer back to a lot. There's also two spreads in here that were really different and that I have added to my tarot journal. So first there is this lunar spread, which looks a little bit like the center of a Celtic cross, but the positions are based on the lunar phases, which I thought was really cool. There is in the center, the 1 and 2 position talk about the dark side of the moon and the light side of the moon, so the unconscious and the conscious. And then all of these other ones talk about the dark moon phase, the waning moon, or sorry, the waxing moon, the full moon, and then the waning moon, and all of those and how they associate with the reading. So that was a really cool spread. And then there's also this Spirit of the Circle spread, which was really unique. So this is sort of the image that the spread is based on. And there's a couple other spreads in here too. And that's what the card layout looks like. And the positions are the Self, Spirit of the Ancestors, Spirit of the Tribe, Spirit of Time, Spirit of Place, Spirit of the Journey, and Awen. And so I added both of those spreads into my tarot journal. So I have, this is the lunar spread, and this is the Spirit of the Circle spread, including a little reference drawing for what it's based on and all of my notes on what all the positions are. But this book just was really juicy, and I'm kind of impressed. I read the whole thing because it's not small, but I was really determined once I got into it to read through the entire thing. In the back there is more on like working with the cards. There's an Awen spread. There's some really good stuff in here. So yes, if you have been on the fence about this deck, I would definitely recommend it for a number of reasons, which I think I've covered here. But the imagery is also beautiful. I do like the deck better trimmed because untrimmed it was quite large. So I do prefer it trimmed, and I think it just looks fantastic. So great experience there. I will be thrilled to dive into this deck again. I'm a little leery because I'm going to be working with the Wildwood Tarot also this year as part of my depth year, doing some studying into it. If they're too similar in scope, I might be more drawn to this one of the two. So, and I think they might end up serving similar niches, but we will see by the end of 2019 once I've done my study and know. I mean, they might be very different. I don't know yet, but they're both Will Worthington illustrated decks, and they both have this association with sort of pagan, earthy religion, earth-based spirituality, and this one's just so well done. I think it'd be hard to beat, but I'm very pleased with this one. And I think I got this secondhand for like $15 or $20 Canadian with no shipping because I bought it from somebody locally. I think the full set brand new up here in Canada goes for about $35 maybe at the most Canadian, so definitely worth a look. Next, I was working with the Moon Phases Oracle. This was a trade that I did with Jess over at Stellar Tarot when we did our collab, which I'll try to remember to link below. I love the artwork. I will say that by the end of the week, as much as I love the artwork, and I do want to incorporate some of these cards into my practice in some way, this did not read well for me as an oracle, and I found myself needing something else, and I'll have a story to tell about that in a moment. And we're already at 15 minutes, so you know we're going to be here a little while longer. But basically this deck has cards to represent each of the 13, I think it is, moons in the month. So you've got the one I just showed you was the storm moon. There is also Christmas moon for December. There's the hare moon for April. Bright moon. Here's a bright moon with the raven. There's the blessing moon. I can't remember which month this one was. And then it's also got cards here for waning moon. So these are moon phases. Again, I love the artwork, and I actually really love the font on it too. I think Intentions is a new moon phase card. And then also different times of day. So there's like a dusk and a dawn card in here, which has an associated meaning. Wolf moon, resources. See, there's a bunch of, here's a resources card. There's some animals in here. There's father and mother energies represented by bears in here. Rocks. I mean, so it's kind of a mix. It's kind of like there's cards that are just, I feel like, very oracle-y. Death. But then there's also moon phases, and then there's monthly moons, and as beautiful as this deck is, it just felt kind of disjointed to work with. I wasn't bothered by the one card here that is reversed, which I was pretty sure, see if I can find it, or that's double-sided. That's this. So this card says blessing on one side and manifestation on the other. Didn't bother me. I still really enjoyed shuffling and seeing it peek like into the shuffle as I was moving through. That was kind of fun. But yeah, it just felt a little disjointed. I read the entire guidebook, and the guidebook left something to be desired for me as well. So it just, the meanings didn't feel clear. Like, they felt a little rambly. And they were nice, but they just didn't feel like, it didn't feel like the meanings had been articulated as well as I think the author originally wanted to articulate them. I don't think this deck is still in print anymore, so this isn't one that I think that anybody's like planning to pick up or anything like that, but I do want to work with it, especially with the artwork, and I might use this deck kind of in a way, in the same way that I use the Witchlings deck by Paulina Cassidy, which is to consciously choose cards to work with for different energies, like in spell work or as like altar cards to work with. I might use it that way because I do think the art is just lovely. It's like, there's just something about it that I just really enjoy. I might pull out the card for each monthly full moon that is coming, and like, I don't know, I haven't decided yet, but it just feels like it's trying to be a moon oracle, and it's trying to be an oracle with some animals and some random things, and then also the moon. It doesn't feel as cohesive as I think I wanted it to feel. So I'll figure out how I'm going to work with that. I don't think I want to part with it at this point, not yet anyways. So I'd like to give it a chance and work with it in a different way, but that didn't end up working. And because it didn't end up working, I decided for the like third or fourth time to dig back out of my to be rehomed pile that you see over there in that corner, my Mystical Shaman Oracle, and really consider, I love the artwork so much that I really needed to know that I've given it my all to connect with this deck before rehoming it. And I really had no luck the first couple of times. So what I did was I pulled out the cards, and I started going through them. Like, I put the book aside, I started going through them and intuitively looking at them and going, does that mean something to me? And every time I encountered an image that I wasn't sure I would know, I would get an intuitive hit off of if I was doing it in a reading or pulled in a reading, every time that happened to me, I set it aside. And when I was all done, I had a very small pile of cards that I needed to look up in the guidebook and see what the intention was about those and get a different perspective. And once I did that, something sort of just clicked, and I was like, oh. And then I flipped through the images all over again, shuffled them all together, and I felt like I had something to feel or think about every card, and I was like, okay, all right. Then I had the opportunity to do a client reading. I had a couple client readings actually this past weekend, or past week. It was like midweek, and or towards the early part of the week, now that I think about it. And so I pulled these out and used them as my oracle deck in those readings, and it read beautifully for me. I just had to get out of my own way. I put the guidebook away, and the funny thing is, I've heard people say, well, the guidebook is kind of a problem with this deck, or some people haven't liked the guidebook. I don't dislike the guidebook. I just felt like I needed to spend enough time with this deck that I wouldn't feel lost without the guidebook. And where I could really trust the messages I was getting from the cards, because some of these, quite frankly, I haven't had a lot of, like, look at this card, how beautiful it is. I don't think I trusted myself to get the information from the cards that I wanted. So I worked with this probably more than the Moon deck this last week, because it just was filling that need for an Oracle deck to reach for and to pull into. And it did so good for me. And I think I got, like I said, I got clear messages. I don't feel like I struggled at all. And so I'm very happy to have this deck, like, in my collection. And it was kind of, so it was an accidental third deck for the week. But I'm really pleased that I was able to befriend it and to figure out how it wanted to work with me, because I have loved the artwork from the first time I saw it. And I needed it to be more than just pretty pictures. And it did that for me this week. So I'm very, very, very excited. So I kind of cheated a little and got an extra deck in, but it worked out well. So that was really, really exciting. Phew! Okay. Coming up next week, I have 2 decks to play with. I'm going to be working with the Gill Tarot by Elizabeth Josephine Gill. I got this a couple, I want to say like more than, like probably about a month and a half ago, almost 2 months ago. And I actually had to, US Games had it out, but they weren't shipping to Canada, at least at the time. And so I couldn't get it from my local shop. They weren't able to order it in for me right away. They were after that able to order it in. But by that time I'd already asked my big sister to order it into the US. And she did that. And then she brought it up with her, one visit. I think it was near the end of 2018. I don't say, actually it might have even been October. She brought this deck up with her. And I flipped through it, but I haven't had a chance to work with it yet because I've had so many other decks that were first in line. So I will be working with this one this week. It'll be really interesting to see how it reads for me. I have a feeling I'm going to really, really like it. I do have the large book that you can get with it that gets into all the Kabbalah and stuff. But to be honest, that's a whole layer of study I don't think I want to take on right now, because I've got other decks that I am studying at that level. I want this to just read right out of the box for me. That's how I'm going to approach it, and we'll see how it does this week. I have a feeling it's going to be good, though. I'm already shuffling it. Why? Why am I shuffling? I don't know. It's compulsive. So that is the tarot deck I will be working with this week. It does have a little white book that comes with it. I do not plan to trim or edge this deck right now because the backs have a white border and so do the fronts. And I've seen Simon's video where he showed his trimmed and his untrimmed, and I do think I prefer it better with the borders, and I like the size. It's like this nice kind of chunky squarish size. And the little white book does not look like insubstantial, and it is all in English, so this is all information on the cards. So if I want to dive a little deeper, I have this, but I think I'm going to save the guidebook, not the guidebook, but the accompanying book that you can buy separately. I think I'm going to save that till when I have some time to study. And I might keep this sort of in my back pocket because I have 4 decks I'm going to be studying this year in that more in-depth way. And if one of them it's just not happening, I might flip over to this one if I think I want that layer. But I have a feeling I'm going to like this deck at face value. So we will see. I'm not attached to getting into this particular deeper book Kabbalah stuff, at least not yet. So that I'm going to be playing with this week. The other deck I'm going to be playing with this week was another sort of, oh, I grabbed the wrong deck. I grabbed the wrong deck, you guys. Okay, you're going to watch me like hobble because I totally hurt my back and I don't want to have to edit. So just bear with me. It'll be fine. Actually, no. You know what? I'm going to pause this and I will stitch it together because nobody wants to watch me hobble all over the bedroom. 1 second. I'm back. So I totally grabbed the wrong bag. It's because they're both black and white bags and I forgot which was which. But this was also a secondhand find. This was, I think I got this deck for $5 from somebody in my local area. These are called the Inquiry cards. And there is an expansion deck to these. I just have the base deck. But they are these really cool hexagram? Hex 6? I think this is hexagram. No? That's not right. Octagon? Septagon? Septagon? Somebody help me with my geometry. If you know what shape this is, just tell me. Because I'm probably going to be too lazy to look it up. But anyways, this is a deck of questions. How can I be more flexible? What's the easier way? And the artwork is okay. They're like kind of kaleidoscopy. What am I feeling? What do I want to create? And I thought what delights me. I thought what could be fun would be to use this like a mini tarot spread. So either pull one or a few of these, set them out, and then draw tarot cards for each question. I thought that could be a really fun way to work with this deck, sort of like an Insta Tarot spread deck. So that's kind of what I think I might do with them this week. Who can I help? What's the most loving choice? Or I might dig through the deck and pull some questions consciously that I want to pull cards for. What needs to change? I think for daily spreads, I'm probably just going to randomly pull a question, just one, and then pull a tarot card from the Guild Tarot for it. But yeah, I'm kind of excited to dig into these. I feel like this is such a cool thing to have. Again, it was only $5. I'm probably going to edge these in something. Probably a vibrant blue, maybe even like a sky blue, like this lighter blue here, just for the contrast of it. But I just thought these were really cool. They actually came with a tiny little wood stand that is meant to hold one, so that you could put one out like on your altar space or something for the day to kind of look at, glance at, notice, etc., meditate on, think about. But I've got that sitting behind me on the shelf. I can't figure out how to point in this camera. There we go. Behind on that shelf, way in the back corner, I have my Tree Guardian that I got in my Witch's Moon box. And on top of that, I've put this little the little wooden card holder that came with this. And I have my tarot card of the month in that spot. So I've got my January tarot card up there. And I like using it for that. So I will just be keeping these in their bag and pulling them as needed. But I thought this would be super great if I want to think about different ideas or create my own spreads. Like I might flip through these and kind of see if any of them would be fun to build into a spread that I might want to keep. If I do, I will put it in my tarot journal. I do keep meaning to. I have filmed a video where I set this tarot journal up. This is a hybrid. This is sort of the result of moving things over from my bullet journal that were tarot related, usually spreads and notes on keywords, numerology, things like that. I've moved them over into this journal, and this is my to keep journal, so it's not meant to be time-based things, but rather spreads I want to keep, keywords or notes on tarot as a general thing, or like notes on Lenormand or whatever in here. But I have a video where I've set it all up, and I've got to put all the clips in a thing, like a video editor, and like speed it up and put it to music and do all that kind of stuff. So it's a project, but I will put that up hopefully this month so you can see it in January. But that is that. So these are the two I'm going to be working with this month, and I'm excited to dig into them. Especially excited to just play with the Guild Tarot because I love keywords. This deck is all about keywords. I just can't wait. I have a feeling it's going to be a similar relationship to my relationship with the Osho Zen, which I have also had for like forever, as you guys know. So that is it. This is long, but I appreciate you sticking it out. I had a lot to say about the Druidcraft. I ended up working with 2 Oracle decks, which also stretched out the time a bit. But as always, I hope you all have a beautiful day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are, and I will see you all again very soon. Bye-bye.